This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
We will enter into 6-minute rounds, starting with 6 minutes through the chair. We are colleague to colleague, so if we can have respectful dialogue, I will obviously provide some leniency. If there is people speaking over people, I will do what I do and remind you that we don't do that. So 6 minutes to Mr. Cooper, followed by 6 minutes to Mr. Garrettson, suivi 6 minutes à Madame Goudreau, et puis à Madame Matheson. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister McKinnon, when the former SS soldier was invited and recognized in Parliament during the address of President Zelensky, you were the chief government whip. You are now the government House leader. We have since learned that Justin Trudeau sent an invitation to this very same SS soldier 3 days before the address of the President of Ukraine to his exclusive reception in Toronto with none other than the President of Ukraine, President Zelensky. So, on behalf of Justin Trudeau's government, will you apologize for what ought to be a significant embarrassment on the part of the government to have invited an SS soldier to this exclusive reception?
Point of order. Madam Chair, we're clearly, talking about the incident that occurred in the House of Commons. That's what the study is about and the impacts of it. I understand that there might be some questions that stray, just partially outside the line, but now we're into a line of questioning that has absolutely nothing to do with our study. Is the entire line of questioning going to be outside the scope of what we're studying? And if so, why don't we do a separate study on the issue that Mr. Cooper is suggesting?
So, what I will say is that I think we all know what the purpose of procedure in House affairs is. We also know that based on comments that are provided, there are leniency as to where questions can unfold and go to be. So I think when some doors for lines of questioning are open, then there will be some gray area. I think the minister is capable of answering such concerns and questions. And if he's not, so your point is noted, Mr. Garrettson.
I have another point of order when you're done.
I would really appreciate that we get to the end of this meeting. So I'm going to say that within some leniency, that comment and concern can be permissible. Mr. Garrettson.
Fair. But again, on a point of order, we're here to ask witnesses, like we did very respectfully in the first panel, of information in order to provide content for our report. Mr. Cooper is asking for, not only is he entertaining discussion outside of the scope of the work, he's literally asking the witness now for something that has nothing to do with the actual report. He's asking him to apologize for something which has nothing to do with the report. So I just want to understand if we're going to be spending the next hour in this manner or if we're going to actually be trying to contribute to the report.
I would hope that Mr. Cooper now will want to respond. Yes, Mr. Cooper.
Well, Madam Chair, it absolutely is pertinent. This is a Prime Minister who claimed he knew nothing about this individual. We now learn that he sent an invite to the very same SS soldier 3 days before the address of the President of Ukraine. And I asked the government House leader a very simple question: will he apologize on behalf of the government? I would hope the answer would be yes.
And so good news, as members of this committee, we get to ask questions. We do not get to predetermine what the answers are, but I'm sure the minister looks forward to answering it. I am going to ask us to remember why we are here. And based on why we are here, I would like us to continue having a respectful exchange. And I would like us to come to the conclusion of this meeting as quickly as possible so I can start looking forward to Thursday's meeting. So with that, I'm going to restart the clock, you're not starting from the top, but your time of 1 minute for your question remains. And I'm going to give the floor to Minister McKinnon. I am confident there will be no more interruptions. And I'm also confident that Minister McKinnon will be brief in his response so that Mr. Cooper can continue with his line of questioning. Minister McKinnon.
What I said in my remarks is that the Prime Minister had offered his apology in the House upon learning, outside the House, upon learning of the error that was made by the Speaker, and spoke, I think, through the forum that was offered him to our visitors. Indeed, we've acknowledged that this was a terribly embarrassing incident for Canada, and I think that stands for itself.
Prime Minister only acknowledged the invitation of this former SS soldier after he got caught, after it was reported by the media, several months after the fact. Why did the Prime Minister hide this fact from Canadians?
I'm not sure I accept the premise of the question that he hid anything.
Well, the premise of the question is very simple. There's a list of invitees from the Prime Minister. That comes from his office. It included this former SS soldier. He has said he knew nothing about this individual. He had no knowledge, no involvement, nothing whatsoever. And now we learn through the media that, in fact, his office, 3 days before, sent an invite to this individual. So again, why did the Prime Minister withhold this material fact from Canadians about his office's involvement with this former SS soldier?
As I think you acknowledged, Mr. Cooper, I was the Chief Government Whip. I'm here to discuss what I understand to have been the process that led to and ensued from the events in Parliament that day. The fact is that an error was committed. The Speaker acknowledged that error, took responsibility for that error, paid arguably a very high price for that error. We were all embarrassed by that. I think I speak for all parliamentarians in expressing our embarrassment for that event. The Prime Minister himself expressed his regrets and apologies to President Zelensky.
He expressed his apologies in respect of his invite to of a former SS officer after he got caught. And speaking of the former Speaker, yes, the Prime Minister threw the former Speaker under the bus. And the Prime Minister said he did the right thing in resigning upon inviting and recognizing a former SS soldier. Why one standard for the former Speaker, who the Prime Minister threw under the bus, and not the same standard for the Prime Minister who invited this very same former SS soldier to an exclusive reception where, had he attended, he could have very easily accessed or would have been within feet of President Zelensky?
This former Speaker stood in his place, acknowledged the presence of a person whose background that no one was aware of that day. I was there that day. I assume you were there that day. The past history of this gentleman was unknown to us all. The fact that he would be recognized was unknown to us all. And the Speaker took his own initiative to invite this person to the speech, which was a decision that was made by the Speaker and solely by the Speaker. So that's what I can comment on here, and I think the appropriate apologies, starting with the former Speaker, continuing with the Prime Minister and others, have been made. And I think sometimes, Mr. Cooper, when something...
Okay, so I'm going to actually interrupt both of you fine gentlemen. For the last 53 seconds remaining, I provided a lot of leniency. I will remind us all that we are at the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. As somebody who lives about an hour away from Toronto, I feel like they receive a lot of attention. I would like us to resituate ourselves to the House of Commons in the nation's capital so that this committee can do its work. So I do believe I've demonstrated a lot of leniency, and I would just like us to get back to the study and the work that we're here to do within your last 53 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
The Prime Minister threw the former Speaker under the bus. He took no responsibility. He covered up the fact that his office sent an invite to this former SS soldier. So, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. McKinnon, I'll ask the question I posed to you at the start of my round. Will you apologize on behalf of the government for this outrageous invite?
Well, I reject the premise, unfortunately, Mr. Cooper, of your question. And
Stand by the invitation.
of course, what I said in my initial
You have no shame.
What? Oh my heavens!
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. Gerritsen.
Madam Speaker, the rules of the House of Commons and what happens in our chamber extend to committee. And to suggest that a member is not honorable by saying you have no shame is certainly out of order in our chamber, and therefore it would certainly be out of order in this room. I would kindly request that Mr. Cooper withdraw that comment and apologize to the witness.
I withdraw. Are you not embarrassed that you won't give an unequivocal
Okay,
apology?
so
on the
I
part of
think
the
this is
government?
where I really do believe in the work this committee does. And I think what happens is that I really take my role seriously as the chair of this committee, believe it or not. And I think you do all take turns at trying to compromise the work that I do. And it makes it very awkward and it makes it very difficult. And I will just let you know that I do not appreciate it. So if we can just continue to carry ourselves with the regard that I know we can, we are by default honorable members. We don't even have to prove it. We just get that title. So let's just be that title for the dozens of people who are watching. So I do think Mr. Cooper recognized and did retract those comments. We'll leave it at that. The last 17 seconds will be yours, Mr. Minister McKinnon, to respond, and I will be moving on to Mr. Gerritsen.
I said, I think, what I can say and understand to be the case about the incident to which you refer. Suffice to say, Mr. Cooper, I fully put to you that the Government of Canada has expressed its extreme regret for the error that the Speaker made, the former Speaker.
Mr. Gerritsen.
I guess the precedent has been set by Mr. Cooper, but just out of curiosity, Mr. McKinnon, have you ever given a TV interview with, in the background, there being a flag with a swastika drawn on it?
Not to my knowledge.
Unfortunately, that can't be said for all members that sit at this
Point
table.
of order, Madam
But,
Speaker. I can't.
Point of order, Mr. Berthold.
Je veux juste rappeler Monsieur Garrett.
I'd just like to remind Mr. Garrison that he's not going to preach at us here. There is a purpose for staying on track and on theme of this committee. And I think, you were recommending that we stick to the project. Let's do so.
That's now come up in, I'm going to have to provide the same leniency. And that's where I always say when we do want to say that there's a certain grayness of asking questions, if we focused on the study and the work of this Procedure and House Affairs Committee, it would be a lot easier for all of us. But now that we are referring to interviews that people are having with media, and it sounds like that's what Mr. Gerritsen is doing, I'm going to hope that he's going to demonstrate relevance to get us back to the study. And I'm sure Mr. Gerritsen will offer me that courtesy to you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I certainly tried to bring us to relevance during Mr. Cooper's comments. However, I was unsuccessful, and he's now set a precedent. But in any event,